For a long time, I told myself nothing was wrong with my marriage, that this heavy feeling in my chest was just stress or lack of sleep or the normal weight of adult life, because that is what married women are supposed to think, right? That love changes shape and becomes quiet and tired, but lately even the silence in our house felt sharp, like broken glass under my feet, and every small sound made me nervous, the clock ticking too loud, the fridge turning on in the middle of the night, the soft buzz of my husband's phone lighting up the dark bedroom, and I would lie there awake pretending to sleep while my heart beat so fast it almost hurt, wondering who could be texting him at 2 in the morning, and when I asked the next day he always had a simple answer, too simple, work stuff, a friend, spam, and then he would look at me like I was crazy for even asking, like I had already done something wrong just by being suspicious, and somehow I always ended up apologizing, saying sorry. You're right, I'm just tired, I think too much, because that is what he liked to say about me, that I think too much, that I imagine problems, that I create drama where there is none. You're overthinking again. He would laugh, or sometimes he wouldn't laugh, sometimes he would snap and say, stop acting paranoid, and the word paranoid stayed with me all day like a stain I couldn't wash away, because what if he was right? What if I really was just broken inside, too sensitive, too emotional? The kind of woman who ruins her own happiness. He didn't used to be like this, or maybe he was and I just didn't see it, but before he used to call me on his way home, he used to bring me small things from the grocery store like my favorite chocolate or those cheap flowers wrapped in plastic. He used to sit next to me on the couch and touch my leg without even thinking about it, simple warm things that made me feel chosen, but now he came home late more often, smelling like a different soap, sometimes like perfume that wasn't mine, and when I tried to hug him his body felt stiff, like he was already somewhere else in his mind, and if I asked why he was late he would sigh deeply, the way a tired father talks to a difficult child, and say, do we really have to do this every night? And I would feel small, so small, like I was asking for too much just by wanting to know where my own husband had been. The worst part wasn't the lateness or the coldness, it was how confused I felt all the time, because some days he was kind again, making jokes in the kitchen, touching my hair, calling me babe like nothing was wrong, and I would feel stupid for doubting him. I would think, see, you almost ruined everything with your crazy thoughts, and then the next day he would ignore my messages for hours and come back angry, and the cycle would start again. Warm then cold, love then distance, until I didn't trust my own memory anymore, until I started keeping notes in my phone like a detective, writing things like, Tuesday, home at 1:15 a.m., or, Friday, said meeting but no laptop bag, and every time I did that I felt ashamed, like I was becoming someone ugly and suspicious, not the calm woman I thought I was. Sometimes I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and tried to figure out what changed, if I gained weight, if I talked too much, if I stopped being interesting, because maybe this was my fault, maybe he was bored with me and I didn't even notice when it happened. And the scariest thought of all was that maybe nothing was happening at all and I was slowly losing my mind, because that is what he kept telling me in soft, patient words. You always imagine the worst. You're too emotional. You need to relax. And every time he said those things, I believed him a little more, even when my stomach twisted with a quiet warning I couldn't explain, like my body knew something my brain refused to see, like there was a crack forming under my life and I was the only one pretending the floor was still solid. A few weeks later we went to my parents' house for Sunday dinner. Something we had done 100 times before, something that used to feel safe and warm and normal, like going back to the place where nothing bad could touch me, and I remember sitting in the passenger seat while my husband drove, watching the streets pass by and feeling that same quiet anxiety in my chest, because even being alone with him in the car felt strange now, like we were two co-workers sharing a ride instead of a married couple, and he kept checking his phone at red lights, tilting it away from me just a little, not enough to look obvious, but enough that I noticed, and every small movement made my mind spin stories I didn't want to think about, so I forced myself to look out the window and count the shops we passed like a child trying not to cry. My parents' house smelled like soup and lemon cleaner when we walked in, the same smell from my childhood, and my mom hugged me tight and kissed my cheek and said I looked tired, and I laughed and told her work was busy, because it was easier than telling the truth, easier than saying I felt like my marriage was slowly disappearing in front of me and I didn't know how to stop it, and my husband acted perfect in front of them, smiling, helping my dad set the table, calling my mom, Mom, in that sweet voice he only used around family, and watching him like that made me feel even more confused, because how could someone look so kind and still make me feel so lonely at the same time, and for a moment I almost convinced myself again that I was the problem, that maybe I expected too much, that maybe this was just what adulthood looked like. After dinner, my mom asked me to help her in the kitchen while the men watched TV, and we stood side by side washing dishes like we used to when I was a teenager, warm water running over our hands, plates clinking softly, and she asked me the usual questions about life, about whether we were thinking of moving to a bigger place, about when we might have kids, and every question felt heavy, like she was talking about a future that I wasn't even sure existed anymore, and at some point my phone battery died, the screen going black right in the middle of a message I was typing to a friend, and I sighed and told her I needed to check something quickly, and she said, "Just use my phone, honey," so casually, like it meant nothing, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I took her phone without thinking twice, because why would I ever hesitate to use my own mother's phone, and I remember feeling almost comforted by how normal it all felt, standing there in her kitchen, drying my hands on a towel, unlocking her screen the way she showed me 100 times before, but the second the phone lit up, a message banner slid down from the top, just a small gray box with a name I knew better than my own, my husband's name, and for a second my brain didn't understand what I was seeing, because why would my husband be texting my mother, and not just texting, but texting at that moment, like they were in the middle of a conversation, and I told myself it must be something simple, maybe about dinner or groceries or some family thing, but my fingers suddenly felt cold and slow, like they didn't belong to me, and I stood there staring at the screen while the sink water kept running, my heart starting to pound so loudly I was scared she could hear it, and even though a small voice in my head told me to ignore it, to respect her privacy, to put the phone down and walk away, another stronger voice whispered that if I didn't look now, I might never know the truth, and that thought scared me more than anything else. My thumb hovered over the screen for a few seconds that felt like minutes, and I kept telling myself this was stupid, that I was being dramatic, that there had to be a normal explanation for why my husband was messaging my mother, because families text each other all the time, right? Maybe he was asking about a recipe or about my dad's birthday gift or something small and boring like that. But my chest felt tight and my ears were ringing, and I could hear the water still running in the sink behind me, too loud now, like a warning siren, so I quickly turned it off and wiped my hands again even though they weren't wet anymore, just to give myself one more second to think, one more second to decide whether I really wanted to open something that might change everything. Then I tapped the message. At first I only saw the last line, "Don't worry, she still doesn't suspect anything." I read it once, then again, and the words didn't make sense, like they were written in another language, and I actually looked around the kitchen like maybe this message wasn't real, like maybe I had imagined it, and my brain tried to protect me by creating softer meanings. Maybe he was planning a surprise party, maybe it was a joke, maybe I misunderstood, but the sentence was too clear, too sharp, and my stomach dropped so suddenly I thought I might faint. My hands started shaking as I scrolled up, slowly at first, like moving through a dark room, afraid of what I might bump into, and then faster, because once you start falling you don't really have control anymore, and the messages kept going, not just from today, not just from this week, but from months ago, long gray and blue bubbles stacked on top of each other, dates I recognized, nights I remembered crying myself to sleep, nights he told me he was working late, and there he was, texting my mother, updating her, explaining things, like they were partners in some quiet project that had nothing to do with me. I saw my mom's words, my own mother's words, calm and careful, telling him things like, "Be patient with her, and she gets emotional easily, and don't tell her too much, she will overthink," and each sentence felt like a small knife sliding under my skin, because this wasn't just casual chatting, this was advice, instructions, like she was helping him manage me, like I was a problem they both had to handle together. Then I saw her say, "If you need time with the other woman, just make sure my daughter doesn't find out, she wouldn't survive that kind of heartbreak," and I actually stopped breathing for a moment, like my body forgot how, because there it was, written so simply, the other woman, not a guess, not a fear, but a fact they both accepted, something they talked about like the weather. My husband had replied, "I know, I'm careful. She still trusts me," and my mom sent a heart emoji after that, a stupid little red heart, and I thought about all the time she hugged me and said everything would be fine, all the time she told me I was lucky to have such a good man, and suddenly those memories felt fake, like scenes from a play everyone else understood except me. The worst part wasn't even the affair, it was how they talked about me, like I wasn't a real person, like I was fragile glass or a child or maybe just an obstacle. "She's too sensitive," my mom wrote once. "If she starts asking questions, just tell her she's imagining things," and my husband answered, "Yeah, she always doubts herself anyway," and I felt something break inside me when I read that, because it was true. I did doubt myself, all the time, and now I knew why, because the two people I trusted most had been quietly pushing me in that direction, shaping my reality, making me feel crazy on purpose. Standing there in that small kitchen, holding my mother's phone, I realized I wasn't paranoid or dramatic or broken, I wasn't losing my mind, I had just been lied to for so long that I stopped trusting my own eyes, and that truth hurt more than anything else. I don't know how long I stood there staring at the screen, but it felt like time had stopped completely, like the world outside that kitchen didn't exist anymore, and all that mattered were those messages glowing in my hands, proof that everything I had been feeling for months wasn't imagination or insecurity or stress, it was real, painfully real, and yet instead of feeling relief or finally knowing the truth, I just felt empty, like someone had scooped everything out of my chest and left a hollow space behind, because the truth wasn't just that my husband was cheating, it was that my own mother knew, had known for months, maybe longer, and had chosen his side without ever telling me, without even giving me a chance to protect myself. I scrolled more, even though every new message hurt, because once the door is open you can't stop looking inside, and I saw conversations about me like I was a case study, like they were doctors discussing a patient. She's been more anxious lately. My husband wrote one night, the same night I had cried in the bathroom and asked him if he still loved me, and my mom replied, "That's just how she is, she always thinks the worst. Don't take it personally." And I remembered that night so clearly. How small I felt apologizing for my own feelings, how he hugged me and said I needed therapy because I worried too much, and now I realized he wasn't comforting me, he was controlling me, gently pushing me to believe that my instincts were wrong. There were messages where he complained about me, about how I asked too many questions, how I noticed little things, and my mom told him, "Just tell her she's overreacting, she hates conflict, she'll back down." And reading that felt worse than any insult, because she knew me so well, knew exactly which buttons to press to make me doubt myself, and she handed that information to him like a weapon. I even found messages where she warned him when I was planning to talk to him seriously, like, "She seems suspicious tonight, be careful." And I felt sick realizing that every time I thought I was having an honest conversation with my husband, he was already prepared, already acting, already one step ahead because my own mother had briefed him. It made my whole marriage feel fake, like a long performance where I was the only one who didn't have the script. My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone, and I quickly locked the screen when I heard footsteps in the hallway, my heart jumping into my throat, because suddenly I was terrified of getting caught, which made no sense, because they were the ones lying, not me, but that's what happens when you're trained to doubt yourself, you start feeling guilty for discovering the truth. My mom walked back into the kitchen smiling, drying her hands on a towel, asking if I found what I needed, and I looked at her face, the same face that used to kiss my forehead when I was sick, the same eyes that watched me graduate, the same mouth that told me she loved me every time we hung up the phone, and I felt like I was looking at a stranger wearing my mother's skin, because how could someone who loved me talk about me like that? How could she reduce me to too sensitive and won't understand, like I wasn't strong enough to handle my own life? I forced a smile and handed her phone back, saying, "Yeah, thanks," and my voice sounded normal, calm, almost cheerful, which scared me even more, because inside I felt like I was screaming, like the ground under my childhood home had opened up and I was falling through it, and in that moment I understood something very clearly. The problem wasn't just my husband anymore, it was bigger, older, deeper, like a crack that had been there since I was a kid, and I just hadn't seen it until now. I don't remember much about the rest of that evening, not in a clear way, because everything after those messages felt blurry, like I was watching my own life through dirty glass, smiling at the right times, nodding when someone talked to me, pretending to laugh at my dad's old jokes while inside my head there was only one sentence repeating again and again, "My mom knew, my mom knew, my mom knew," and every time I looked at her moving around the kitchen, fixing plates, asking if everyone wanted more soup, she looked so normal that it almost hurt more, because evil people are supposed to look different, cold or cruel or obvious, but she just looked like my mother, soft sweater, tired eyes, gentle voice, the same woman who used to sit on the edge of my bed when I had nightmares, and that contrast made my stomach twist, because how could someone be both loving and betraying at the same time? How could the person who taught me to trust the world be the one helping my husband lie to me? My husband acted perfect too, touching my shoulder when he passed by, asking if I was okay because I looked quiet, and I had to fight the urge to laugh in his face, because the performance was so clean, so practiced, like he had done this for months without feeling even a little guilty, and I started noticing things I had ignored before, the way he and my mom sometimes shared quick looks across the table. Small signals that meant nothing to anyone else but now felt suspicious, like a secret language I had never been invited to learn. At one point he went outside to take a call, and my mom casually said, "Work never leaves him alone, poor guy," defending him automatically, and it hit me that she had probably been covering for him this whole time, not just with messages but in real life too, building excuses for him before I even asked questions, shaping the story around me so I would never see the cracks. I felt stupid, deeply stupid, for all the times I complained to her about my worries and she stroked my hair and said, "You think too much, sweetheart, he loves you," because now I understood that those weren't comforting words, they were control, soft control, pushing me back into silence every time my instincts tried to wake me up. When we finally left the house that night and got into the car, the sky was dark and empty, and I watched my childhood home get smaller in the mirror, and for the first time in my life it didn't feel like a safe place anymore, it felt like a stage where everyone knew the script except me, and something inside me shifted quietly, not anger, not even sadness, but something colder, like a slow decision forming without words. Because I realized I couldn't scream or cry or accuse them yet, I didn't have the energy for a big dramatic scene. I just felt tired, so unbelievably tired, like I had been carrying a heavy bag for years and only now noticed the weight, and all I wanted was to put it down. My husband reached over and held my hand while he drove, like he always did, and I let him, staring at our fingers together and thinking how strange it was that this same hand had probably been holding another woman's body, texting my mother about how to keep me calm. And for a second I felt nothing at all, no jealousy, no rage, just distance, like he was already someone I used to know, like our marriage had ended quietly without telling me. That scared me more than anger ever could, because it meant something inside me was already walking away. That night, when we got home, everything looked exactly the same as always, the same shoes by the door, the same dishes drying near the sink, the same soft yellow light in the hallway, and I remember thinking how strange it was that a place could look so normal while your whole life was quietly falling apart, like the walls didn't know what had happened, like the couch and the table and the pictures on the wall were still living in yesterday, and for a second I just stood there with my coat on, listening to the small sounds of the apartment, the heater turning on, the fridge humming, my husband locking the door behind us, and I felt like a guest in my own home, like I had stepped into someone else's house by mistake. He asked if I wanted tea, the same way he always did after visiting my parents, and I almost said yes out of habit, but the word got stuck in my throat, because the idea of sitting across from him at the kitchen table pretending everything was fine suddenly felt impossible, like acting in a play I didn't agree to anymore, so I just said I was tired and went to the bedroom, and he didn't follow me, which used to hurt but now only felt expected. I changed into my pajamas slowly, moving like an old woman, and sat on the edge of the bed staring at the floor, replaying the messages in my head again and again. Every sentence burned into my memory. She won't understand. She's too emotional. Just tell her she's imagining things. And the more I thought about it, the more pieces started connecting, like a puzzle finally showing the full picture. I remember the time I told him I felt like he was hiding something and he smiled sadly and said, "I think you need help, you're creating problems that don't exist," and how I cried and apologized for accusing him, how I promised to trust him more, and now I saw it clearly. He wasn't calming me, he was training me, teaching me to doubt my own eyes so he could do whatever he wanted, and my mom had helped him do it, like they were raising me together instead of loving me. I thought about all the calls I had with her late at night, whispering that I felt insecure, that something felt off, and how she always said the same things: "Don't ruin your marriage with your imagination. Men are just like that. Be patient," and I used to feel comforted after those talks, like she was protecting me, but now I realized she wasn't protecting me at all, she was protecting him, protecting the lie, protecting the image of a happy family more than my actual happiness. I lay down in bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to him moving around in the living room, laughing softly at something on TV, so relaxed, so normal, and I wondered how someone could live like that, how someone could betray you every day and still sleep peacefully at night, and then a darker thought came to me: maybe it was easy for him because he never really saw me as equal, maybe to him I was just someone to manage, like a problem to solve, and that thought hurt more than the cheating itself. I expected myself to cry, to break down, to scream into a pillow like in movies, but nothing came out, my eyes stayed dry, and that scared me, because it felt like something inside me had frozen, like my heart had decided it couldn't afford to feel everything at once, so it chose nothing instead, just a quiet numbness. And lying there in the dark, I realized something important and very simple. I didn't want to fight for this marriage anymore, not even a little, because you can forgive a mistake, maybe even an affair, but how do you forgive two people slowly rewriting your reality for months, making you question your own mind, making you feel small on purpose? And for the first time the question wasn't, is he cheating? But, why am I still here? The next morning I woke up before my alarm, the room still gray and quiet, that soft early light coming through the curtains, and for a few seconds I forgot everything. I just lay there half asleep listening to the birds outside, feeling that calm empty space you get right after waking up, but then it all rushed back at once, the messages, my mom's words, my husband's lies, and my stomach tightened so fast it felt like falling downstairs, and I turned my head and looked at him sleeping next to me, his back facing me, breathing slow and heavy, so peaceful, and I studied his face like I was looking at a stranger on a bus, trying to understand who he really was, because the man I thought I married would never hurt me like this, which meant either he had changed or I had never known him at all. I watched him for a long time, noticing small things I used to find cute, the way his hair curled near his neck, the faint scar on his chin, the little snore he made sometimes, and instead of love I just felt distance, like I was remembering an old memory instead of looking at my present life, and that scared me more than anger, because anger means you still care, but this felt like something ending quietly inside me. When he woke up, He smiled and said good morning like always, leaned over to kiss my forehead, and I had to force myself not to pull away, because his touch suddenly felt wrong, like someone wearing gloves touching my skin, and he asked what I wanted for breakfast, talking about his plans for the day, acting like everything was normal, and I realized he had no idea that I knew, which gave me a strange kind of power, a quiet secret of my own. And for the first time in months I wasn't the confused one he was. While he showered, I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table alone, holding the warm mug with both hands, and instead of crying or panicking like I thought I would, my mind felt very clear, almost calm, like after a storm when everything is still, and I started replaying our entire relationship from the beginning, not through love but through logic, and I began seeing small red flags I had ignored for years. The way he sometimes joked that I was too sensitive, the way he made decisions without asking me and called it protecting me from stress, the way my mom always liked him a little too much, defending him even when he was clearly wrong, and I wondered if this pattern had been there from the start, if I had slowly been trained to accept less and less until I thought this was normal. I opened my laptop and tried to work, but instead I found myself staring at an empty screen, thinking about childhood memories, about how my mom used to speak for me when relatives asked me questions, how she would say, "She's shy, she can't handle pressure," even when I wanted to answer myself, and suddenly I saw the connection, how she had always decided what I could or couldn't handle, how she always thought she knew me better than I knew myself, and maybe helping my husband hide the affair wasn't new behavior at all, maybe it was just another version of the same thing, her controlling my life for my own good, and that realization hurt deeper than anything, because it meant this betrayal didn't start with my marriage, it started long before, maybe when I was still a kid learning to trust her voice more than my own. Sitting there alone, I felt something settle inside me, not revenge, not drama, just a quiet decision forming like a slow sunrise, and I understood that whatever happened next, I couldn't pretend anymore, I couldn't keep living in a story written by other people. All day I moved through the apartment like everything was normal, like any other weekday, but inside my head it felt like I was packing invisible boxes, quietly sorting my life into piles, what stays, what goes, what was real, what was just a story I told myself to survive, and it surprised me how calm I was, because I used to imagine that if I ever found out my husband was cheating I would scream or throw things or call him crying. But none of that happened, there was no explosion, just this slow cold clarity, like when ice forms over water during the night and in the morning everything is hard and still. He left for work around 9, kissing my cheek and telling me not to overthink things like he always did, the same sentence he had probably practiced 100 times with my mother, and I almost smiled at the irony, because now I wasn't overthinking at all, for the first time I was seeing everything exactly as it was. As soon as the door closed, the apartment felt bigger and quieter, and I just stood there for a moment listening to the silence, realizing how rarely I had been alone in my own thoughts without someone else shaping them, and I walked slowly from room to room like I was visiting a place I was about to leave forever, touching the back of the couch, the kitchen counter, the bookshelf we built together, remembering little moments attached to each object, movie nights, lazy Sundays, small laughs that once felt like love, and I let myself feel sad for those memories, because even if the marriage was a lie, some moments were still real to me, and it hurt to admit that they meant more to me than they probably ever meant to him. Then I opened the closet and stared at my clothes, and that was when the idea first became solid, not just a thought but a plan, simple and quiet. I could leave. Not dramatically, not with a fight, not with accusations, just leave. The word felt strange at first, almost impossible, because leaving always sounded like something other people did, stronger people, braver people, but the more I thought about it, the more natural it felt, like stepping out of a burning building instead of trying to fix the fire. I imagined confronting him, imagined shouting, throwing his phone in his face, telling him I knew everything, but every version of that scene felt exhausting, like giving him one last chance to explain or lie or make me doubt myself again, and I didn't want that. I didn't want any more conversations where he twisted my feelings into weaknesses, and strangely, I didn't even want revenge, because revenge still meant he mattered too much. What hurt the most wasn't him anymore, it was my mother, and that realization kept hitting me again and again like a dull ache, because husbands can betray you, people talk about that all the time, but mothers are supposed to be safe, they're supposed to be the one place you can fall without getting hurt, and knowing she had watched me suffer for months and still helped him lie felt like something breaking deep in my childhood, like losing a home you didn't know you were still living in. I sat on the bed with an empty suitcase in front of me and just stared at it for a long time, my hands resting on my knees, and I whispered out loud, "I can't stay here," just to hear the words, just to make them real, and for the first time since finding the messages, I felt something close to strength, small but steady, like a tiny light in a dark room, telling me I didn't have to beg for love anymore, I could simply walk away. I didn't pack everything at once, because this wasn't a movie and I wasn't running away in the middle of the night with one dramatic suitcase. It was slower and quieter than that, almost boring if someone else watched it, but to me every small movement felt heavy with meaning, like I was closing chapters of my life one by one, folding my sweaters carefully, choosing only the things that truly felt like mine, my old jeans, my notebooks, the mug my friend gave me years ago, my passport, important papers, and I left behind anything that felt connected to us, the wedding photo frame, the matching towels we bought together, the stupid decorative pillows he liked, because suddenly those objects didn't belong to me anymore, they belonged to a version of my life that wasn't real. The suitcase lay open on the bed like a quiet witness, and the sound of the zipper opening and closing seemed too loud in the empty apartment, like even the walls might ask what I was doing, but no one did, and the silence felt strangely supportive, like the house itself understood. Around noon my phone buzzed with a message from my mom, just a simple, "Did you get home safe last night, honey?" with a little heart at the end, and I stared at it for a long time, my thumb frozen above the screen, because the normality of it felt cruel, like she could talk about the weather after everything I had seen, like those messages between her and my husband didn't exist, and I wondered how many times she had texted me sweet things right after helping him lie to me, how many times she called me my girl while calling me too emotional behind my back, and for a moment anger finally rose inside me, hot and sharp, but it wasn't the kind that makes you scream, it was the quiet kind that makes you step away forever. I didn't reply. I just locked the phone and placed it face down on the table like it was something fragile or dangerous. Later my husband called too, asking if I wanted him to pick up dinner on the way home, his voice casual, warm, the same husband voice he always used, and listening to him talk about pasta and groceries while knowing he had another woman and secret conversations with my mother made everything feel unreal, like I was talking to an actor playing my husband, and I answered calmly, said, "Sure, whatever you want." Because I didn't want to fight, not yet, maybe not ever, and when we hung up I realized something strange. I wasn't scared of losing him anymore. For months I had been terrified that he might leave me, that I wasn't enough, that I would end up alone, but now the fear was gone, completely gone, and in its place there was only relief, like someone had unlocked a tight collar around my neck. In the afternoon I booked a small furnished studio apartment across town, nothing fancy, just a bed, a desk, a window, but when I saw the photos online my chest felt lighter, because it looked like a place where no one knew me, where no one would tell me I was too sensitive or imagining things, a place where my thoughts could belong only to me. I paid the deposit without overthinking, which felt like a quiet rebellion against the version of me they had created, the girl who always doubted herself. As the sun started to set and orange light filled the living room, I looked around one last time and realized I wasn't planning to explain anything, not to him, not to my mother, not to anyone, because explanations were for people who cared about the truth, and they had already chosen their own version of it, and suddenly I understood that the most powerful thing I could do wasn't to confront them, it was to disappear from their story completely. That evening, while the sky slowly turned dark outside the windows, I finished packing the last few things with steady hands, not rushing, not crying, just moving with a strange calm that felt almost unreal, like my body already knew what to do and my heart was simply following behind, and every sound in the apartment felt louder than usual, the zipper of my suitcase, the soft click of drawers closing, the rustle of clothes folding, small ordinary noises marking the end of a life I had once promised to keep forever. I wrote a short note and left it on the kitchen table, nothing dramatic, no accusations, no long explanations, just a few simple words, "I'm leaving. Don't look for me. I need peace." I didn't mention the affair, didn't mention my mother, didn't mention the messages, because I realized they didn't deserve my pain written out like a report, they already knew what they did, and I didn't owe them anything, not even my anger. When I heard his key turning in the door, my heart jumped for a second, but not out of love or fear, just instinct, and I quietly rolled my suitcase to the hallway before he could see me, and for a brief moment I considered facing him, saying everything, asking why, demanding answers like people do in movies, but I stopped myself, because I knew exactly how it would go. He would sigh, look tired, tell me I misunderstood, maybe even cry a little, and somehow I would end up questioning myself again, and I was too tired for that, too tired to fight for a version of him that never really existed. So instead I opened the door softly and stepped out into the corridor, closing it behind me with a gentle click, like I was leaving a hotel room after a short stay, not a marriage of years, and as I waited for the elevator I felt my hands shaking just a little, the only sign that this was real, that my whole life was changing in one quiet movement. Outside, the air was cold and fresh, and I took a deep breath like I had been underwater for a long time and finally reached the surface, and for the first time in months my chest didn't feel tight, It felt open, empty but open, like space for something new. I checked my phone one last time and saw 3 missed calls from my mom and one message that said, "Call me when you can, sweetheart," and that word sweetheart almost broke me, because part of me still wanted to run back to her, to believe she loved me the way I loved her, but then I remembered the messages, the way she described me like I was weak, like I couldn't handle the truth, like protecting a lie was better than protecting her own daughter, and I understood something very clearly. My husband's betrayal hurt, but my mother's silence was the wound that would never fully heal. I could maybe forgive a cheating man one day, but I couldn't forgive the woman who taught me what love was and then used that love to keep me blind. So I turned my phone off, put it in my pocket, and walked toward the taxi without looking back at the building, because if I looked back I might hesitate, and I didn't want to hesitate anymore. I didn't know exactly what my new life would look like, where I would be in a year, or who I would become without them, but for the first time those questions didn't scare me, they felt like freedom, like a blank page waiting for my own handwriting instead of someone else's script. I chose myself, quietly, without noise, without revenge, just one simple step after another into the night. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you in any way, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Your support means more than you know.